day. We are One News and welcome to Agenda. Sitting in for Cito Beltran, I'm Regina Lay. Let's start off this program with a boost through our daily starter. From author Maeve Binchy, she says, the whole art of life is knowing the right time to say things. Now let's take a look at some of the headlines on the front page of the Philippine Star. The Philippine government is keeping existing COVID-19 protocols for now. This despite the detection of the more transmissible Omicron subvariant named Centaurus. We hope to discuss that on the second half of the show with our guest experts from the medical field. After United States House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, Malacanang declined to comment on Beijing's remark that the Philippines must abide by the One China policy. We will have UP Diliman's Assistant Professor Jaime Naval to break down this issue with us in just a few moments. Meanwhile, 48% of Filipinos consider themselves and their families poor, according to the latest Social Weather Stations or SWS survey. The palace confirms that 41 bills passed during the administration of Rodrigo Duterte have lapsed into law. And a state funeral with full military honors is set for the deceased former President Fidel V. Ramos. Tensions are at a peak between superpower countries, the United States and China, after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan and offered her support to the democratic island nation. Just within hours, China has hit Taiwan with economic sanctions. The question is, what does all of this mean for the Philippines? Let me bring in our expert today, Professor Jaime Naval.
Jaime Naval is an assistant professor at the UP Diliman Department of Political Science, a keen observer on ASEAN affairs and Chinese politics, among others. Naval has represented the Philippines on issues relating to regional security and strategic management. He obtained his Master in Public Policy at the National University of Singapore, where he graduated as class valedictorian. Naval was also one of the top 100 professors at the UPD Great Ideas Survey of school year 2010 to 2011.
Professor Naval, thank you so much for joining us today. Of course, we are talking about Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, which has been the big news of the day for the last 24 hours or so. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, I wanted to start with a bird's eye view, and I wonder if you could explain to us, to the average Filipino, why this one visit, which to some may seem a small thing, is creating so much ruckus.
Well, good morning, Regina, and good morning to the viewers of Agenda. There's a larger picture beyond the visit of House Speaker Pelosi in Taiwan. You have to look at the relationship between the United States and China as a whole. And the United States, politically, diplomatically, in the 1970s, as it recognized China, Beijing, switching from Taiwan's Republic of China government to the People's Republic of China, has vowed to observe the One China policy. China has been very stern and firm in asserting that Taiwan is a part of its territory, but then the realities on the ground is that Taiwan has its own government. It has its own state and exercises sovereignty. So there's a legal fiction that's there, but nonetheless, the United States has committed diplomatically, politically, to recognize only PRC. However, following the switch from Taipei to Beijing in 1978, the Carter administration has also passed a Taiwan Relations Act, which gives a special stature to Taiwan, and that, among others, it includes the provision of defense articles and coming to render defense services to Taiwan following their respective constitutional process. So Taiwan is part of that big picture and complicated picture at the moment in the scheme of things.
And in short as well, Professor, by going there, the United States is basically acknowledging that Taiwan is a democratic nation, right, which is what's ruffling Beijing's feathers.
Yes, in fact, the statement of in the speeches and the press releases of Nancy Pelosi, she iterated that the issue about advancing or promoting, upholding, supporting Taiwan democracy, and that sends a signal. It's not. She's not even highlighting geopolitics. She's highlighting more the system or the values, the freedom that the United States supposedly would like to uphold and support for Taiwan. Of course, Beijing extremely detests that because it senses that it's violative of the One China policy, and also it's an intrusion and a breach of the sovereignty that it's supposedly exercising in the area. Taiwan.
Right. Let me jump off from that point, Professor. And obviously, as you pointed out, China did not take this visit lightly at all.
Yes.
If I could just enumerate some of the things that they immediately did, which is they put the military on high alert. They conducted military exercises. They summoned the U.S. ambassador in Beijing. And they even went so far as to already, very quickly suspend agricultural imports from Taiwan. So when you look at the broader picture as well, who do you think has the most to lose here? Who's risking the most? Is it Washington? Is it Taipei? Or is it Beijing?
You could see right away that China, and it's apparently SOP on China, but in this case, the SOP had to send a stronger message. Not only did they suspend imports of citrus fruits and seafood products from Taiwan, they also suspended exporting to Taiwan natural soil, which is it's key to the manufacturing of semiconductors. But analysts say it's not going to have a big dent. You would also have to reckon that the live fire drills, naval and air, and the other movements of ships and aircraft has escalated. But though there is an escalation, we also see from a very technical point of view, for example, along the straits, China has not really done so much to cross the dividing line on the strait, which means these moves are really, you turn the knob one or two notches higher perhaps, and it escalated the temperature in the area, but it was so calibrated. We also reckon that politics, international politics is also anchored on domestic politics. Xi Jinping is seeking a third term in the party as president, and this will happen in the fall. He has had some difficulty implementing and really showing that he could implement a zero COVID in China, and the party, of course, are trying to make him account for that. So, in view of that, the leader of China would have to show that he's firm and he's not sitting idly by. So, all these dynamics, domestic, and then the U.S. sending off. This is signaling from the United States. Pelosi coming to Taiwan despite the opposition and the defiance of China is also a calibrated turn of the knob upward. So the question who stands to lose, while Taiwan would have gained not only prominence but some measured substantive measure of assurance from the United States. Expect probably in the coming weeks and even months that China, which appeared to be unable to sustain its defiant move. Some are even talking of, is this the latest humiliation of China? And China is very sensitive about that. But expect that China will have to tighten the screws on Taiwan on the coming weeks, if not months. Abangan natin ang susuga kabanata.
Parang nakakatakot naman, Professor. Actually, that's a great point because remember the United States is also coming up to midterm elections this year,
Yes.
right? And some are saying that this is the DNC, the Democratic Party's way of also asserting their power, their strength, right? And so
Yes,
parang you're right. I think that the domestic policies are playing into this very much so as well.
Yeah, Xi Jinping has his own domestic considerations at the moment. And the United States, the Democratic Party would have, given the midterm elections, are also aware of that. Some are even saying that it's a diversion or a distraction. Bring her out, try to ruffle feathers with China, and then so some diversion from the domestic developments would be made. But that might be, in international politics, there's a level of suspicion that we always accord. But then, of course, we have to bear in mind that in a number of cases, for example, there are constants in the relationship among countries. And this, the rivalry is also counterbalanced by the need for them to cooperate. Both China and the United States, in reality, could not afford to escalate the tension to a point that they could not regulate or control. So they're really they have to fine tune this escalation or increase in the temperature in the relationship.
And that's a great segue to my next question, which is then how far do you think they might take it? Because again, we've already heard some analysts saying that, well, yeah, you're right. Beijing can't afford to escalate this issue. But then again, Taiwan has been a decades-long hot button sensitive point for them, right? And here, parang we've reached the point of escalation. We're already here. It's a game of who blinks first. And Beijing is not one to back down, certainly, right? So how far do you think these nations will take it?
Well, you have to view it from two perspectives. One, when escalation comes, there could be a higher escalation, particularly then when there's a misreading, a reaction that is more than what is commensurate. That is possible. And that's what we are concerned about, the misreading and miscalibrations. But there's also the possibility, the other way around, that after the tension has increased, there would be an easing. Cooler heads can prevail. Some third parties can persuade or remind the conflicting parties to tone down and to go back to status quo ante. Those are possibilities. But if you're asking me point blank, will it simmer right away? My estimate, and this is a guesstimate actually, there would be some manifestations in the next 2 or 3 weeks of simmering, but don't forget, you did this to us from the point of view of China, and the US would say also, in effect, don't forget, we will not just stand idly by. Taiwan it has a coup at this point, a diplomatic coup in effect, but then it will have to bear with the practical implications or consequences on the ground, including the imports and the exports, among others.
That's right. Still so much at stake for both sides here. Professor Jaime Naval, please stay with us. We're going to continue this discussion just after a short break. pick up from where we left off. You were talking about how I asked you how far you think both sides might take this this issue, this conflict, and you think that we might see a few more weeks of simmering tensions, right? When it comes to Washington's next move, where do you think they might go? Are there any aces up President Joe Biden's sleeve? What can he do from here?
That's quite a difficult question to answer. As I indicated in the earlier responses that I gave, the foreign this projections in the international sphere would have its anchors on the domestic. Biden, the U.S. will have its midterm elections, and then on the other hand, you have the Chinese having to decide, the Chinese Communist Party to give Xi Jinping his third term. So I don't know what's the term. I have to look for it more in the dictionary. Clustering, projectioning is something that these two countries and these two leaders would have to do. The choice of a Pelosi, technically the number two in terms of power, the legislative branch in the United States, to go on an Asia tour and even controversially meet with the Taiwanese leader Tsai Ing-wen is very interesting. It is a signaling that it's not coming from a low level interest, but a high interest. There's high premium that they attach to this. So right now there's quite a fluidly complicated situation. We are not even done with Ukraine, and we're continuing to feel the impact directly and indirectly. The two countries cannot afford to disturb more the obtaining order, but expect that the verbal exchanges, punching and counter punching will continue. I also, on the larger frame, also in the longer term, you have the United States trying to firm up the Indo-Pacific arrangement that it wants to have, it seeks to have in the region, both the Pacific and the other side of the Indian Ocean. So maraming damay at kadugsong na issue ito. But to pinpoint it, particularly what Biden would do, that would be something I have to look in even more closely if ever I had a crystal ball.
Yeah, here's hoping we all have crystal balls, no, Professor? Well, speaking of damay, ano yung damay to us, to the Philippines, right? Again, talking about the fact that this has regional security implications. Of course, there will be repercussions. Already, the Beijing, China's foreign envoy has reminded the Philippines to strictly abide by the one China policy, right?
Yes.
We haven't even waded into these waters yet. We haven't even made any overtures to say, oh, we're siding with so-and-so, right? Pero nauna na sila. They were reminding us, okay, so gotta abide by the one China policy. What sort of implications do you see for the Philippines if this drags on?
I hear reports that even as Pelosi was haven't even landed in Taiwan. Right away, we are affected directly. Aviation, air traffic Taiwan had to sound us off regarding rerouting or other arrangements, given the possible rerouting that could occur and the dangers that the provocations can yield. We have how many thousands, tens of thousands of workers in Taiwan. If a shooting war or a miscalibration occurs, obviously we have Filipinos, overseas Filipinos who would be directly affected. We have a standing military alliance, a treaty with the United States. We could ask, what if the United States is attacked and the US invokes? Will the Philippines come into the fray? On the other hand, also China is our largest trading partner as far as the region is concerned, and the second that we have in terms of our global trade picture. So there's a lot of there's real heavy significance on the relations we have bilaterally with these two rival powers, which are now having this verbal exchanges, and we would be affected if this becomes this gets out of hand. So we hope we would be able to not only simmer but contribute to tempering even more the very tense situation.
I mean, as far as President Bongbong Marcos's stance is concerned, he's already indicated we're just continuing the Duterte administration's policy, which is they're going to try to be a friend to everyone and an enemy to none.
Yes.
But with tensions this high, do you think that something like that might then also be misconstrued, particularly considering that he is trying to, it seems to be trying to court both sides in terms of investments, in terms of economic advantages, right?
You cited it earlier. Malacanang to me has been astute as of yesterday when the spokesperson avoided answering the question on what's your position, what's the BBM position on this issue. I think that's being smart. But how far and how far well can this administration stand in, I wanted, the word that came out of my mind was pretending, in being able to navigate a modicum of neutrality. I think if I were to advise government, it's not to stay neutral or a passive observer of the developments, because geopolitically right away, whether we have special relations or fondness with these two countries, right, we're right there south of Taiwan, and we would be affected. We are, and we will be affected even more. But my message or advice would be to encourage both parties to tone down the rhetoric and engage in more constructive arrangements. So that's where diplomacy comes in. We are not merely passive, but we're not siding or we are not allowing the situation to force us to choose one or the other. But we could be more proactive in our statement in saying that we hope that these two countries would be able to tone down and reduce the tension, which is not in the interest in the larger interest of everyone. A shooting war is not something that any country would be benefiting immensely from.
Professor, I wonder if you could expound a little bit on the constructive arrangements that you just mentioned right now. Like, what would that look like? Does it mean sending envoys to hold closed-door discussions, for example? What does it mean to be constructive and without trying to rock the boat?
Back channeling is an option, but then that would be presuming that we are such an influencer in the process. I do not think that the Philippines is can be such a strong standout influence in tempering the scene. But at the moment, we can issue right away statements where we hope that the two countries can moderate their assertiveness. With diplomacy, I think then, for example, the DFA can be tasked to issue the same statement and convey the same message to their respective counterparts. So for the moment, at least in the immediate scene, that could be done.
So sending messages at this point in time,
yes,
via diplomacy.
Because what the statement issued by the spokesperson yesterday works for that specific spot, but then after that, you would be asked for particulars. You have to be more categorical, and I think that's a good categorical diplomatic message.
Right. Well, here's hoping they take on that advice. We're going to have to leave it there. Professor Jaime Naval, Assistant Professor at UP Diliman Political Science Department. We thank you so much for your time and insights this morning.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to pause for a quick break. Keep it here on One News, all sides, all the time. Welcome back to Agenda. I'm Regina Lay, sitting in for Cito Beltran. As if the pandemic has not caused enough problems, the government is also now facing multiple health issues today. I'm talking about the threat of monkeypox and as well the surge in dengue cases nationwide. To talk more about this subject, let's get to know one of our first guest expert for the day, Dr. Anthony Leachon. He's a health reform advocate. Dr. Tony, good morning. Thanks for joining us on the show. Let me get right into it. We're talking about still COVID-19, of course, and then you have a nationwide surge in dengue cases, along with the detection of the first monkeypox case here in the country. A lot of people are asking us, is it time to hit the panic button?
Good morning, Regina. I don't think we need to push the panic button right now. All we need to do right now is to be calm and perhaps do a deep thinking process regarding what went right and what went wrong with the COVID pandemic response. And I think, in my own opinion, since the World Health Organization has declared it as a separate public health emergency of international concern, then it deserves another task force given the importance given by the WHO. So, if you remember, way back in January of 2020, the WHO was actually delayed in declaring it a public health emergency concern by almost 4 weeks, because the first spotted case of the Wuhan coronavirus was on December 8th of 2019. But it took the WHO really, yeah, and then later that month, it escaped actually mainland China, and the rest is actually history. Now, even if you had only a few cases right now, it will pale in comparison with the COVID. Monkeypox, at the moment, we have around 20,000 cases all over the world. But what is actually puzzling, because the cases are coming from a non-endemic area, meaning to say it first originated in Africa, but right now has spread in other areas outside of the endemic area. And it has a separate presentation from the presentation of the old monkeypox in the 1960s. And then it has been, rekindled right now with different presentation. So I think the situation here we should actually create a separate national task force for the monkeypox, so that we will not actually meddle up with the COVID right now, which I think right now is fairly controlled, except that we are on a surge. But the cases right now are not as severe as before because of the vaccination process. So I would say we need to create a national task force so that it will not meddle up with the COVID pandemic response, and then start up with a solid plan of action for detection, surveillance, and preparation of the vaccines for this endeavor. Because you might have actually one case right now, just like the Wuhan, and then suddenly it increased through the last 2 years, and then we might actually be in a panic mode because we will be saddled with many other diseases like dengue, the earthquake calamity diseases, the non-communicable diseases, and so on and so forth. So I think what we need to do right now is to we should have a sense of urgency. That's number one. But we need a guiding coalition or partnership with the private sector, mainly the medical community, to create a bureau of knowledge experts so that they can help right now in messaging and other strategic communication together with the Department of Health. The government cannot do it alone at this point in time. And what I learned from the COVID pandemic response, we need right now more health advocates, more infectious disease experts and policymakers so that we can move forward and then create a vision and a strategy for this one, communicate that vision, and then appoint the right persons for this particular endeavor.
That's a good place to jump off of, Tony, because my next question is, it is a lot to deal with, right? All these viral infections. Do you think that the DOH or the government is well equipped to handle all of these emerging health issues? By well equipped, I mean including the staffing, including the funding, including the hospitals and medical centers, the testing, the contact tracing, and all of that.
Okay. Regina, with due respect to our colleagues from the Department of Health, I don't think they're ready at this point in time. Mainly because based on the son of the president, if you remember the son of the president has recommended the creation of a CDC, a replica of the Center for Disease Control, as well as a virology institute. And of course, you know that for several decades, we're losing our best doctors and nurses to other countries, mainly in the US, Saudi Arabia, and then UK. And then as of late, We're losing them in places like Singapore and South Korea. We are the #1 exporter of nurses in the world.
That's right.
And the #2 exporter of best doctors next to India. But India has a 1 billion population. So basically, we're #1 as well. So what I'm trying to say right now, the Department of Health needs all the help they can get right now. They can get help from other specialty societies like the Philippine College of Physicians or from the PMA. But what we need to do is provide them with the human health resources at this point in time that we have a pandemic and a looming pandemic in the future. So we should nip it in the bud right now based on our experience in the COVID pandemic response in 2020.
And that's why you're advocating for more health reform advocates to be part of the front line to all these emerging diseases. And I want to bring this conversation now to the problem of misinformation, because as journalists, we've seen this issue explode just in the last couple of years, and the health issues, the COVID-19 pandemic topic in particular has fallen prey to that. How do you, or maybe the better question is, where do we even begin to try to combat all of the myths and disinformation about these diseases, especially with monkeypox? We're seeing some of that on Facebook, and it has stigmatized the disease to the point that, you know, it's discriminatory on a particular gender group.
Well, just a month ago, former presidential advisor Joey Concepcion convened the health advocates, and I'm part of the group. Sorry for this one to be presumptuous, but he has called the group as Advisory Council of Experts. And in that particular meeting, if I remember right, we have Dr. Ted Herbosa, Dr. Solante there, and then we have Dr. Maricar Limpin of the Philippine College of Physicians. You have Professor Nina Gloriani of the Vaccine Expert Panel. We had there Dr. Edsel Salbanya, a well-known infectious disease expert. And then we have the OCTA Research Group, Professor Guido David, Ranjit Rai, Michael T., and of course, Father Nick, myself, etc. I couldn't remember. But basically what we're doing right now is to consolidate our forces, our talent and energy, so that we have a unified message. And I think the overarching goal here is to help the government to come up with a strategic communication. And perhaps we had a meeting with the DILG Secretary Benher Abalos to create a certain policy with the government. And I would suggest the IATF, in our own opinion, the composition should be revised, not only to include government agencies, but also from the private sector, as well as independent health advocates with credentials, of course, working with the academe. I think it would be best to be, I would say, unified in this particular approach. So that's the first thing, is to create a speakers bureau or a knowledge experts body. The messaging will be coming from the Department of Health. And if we would deviate from that particular message, then we can say in my own personal experience and opinion. So there's a template or a blueprint coming from the Department of Health, because I don't think the Department of Health can be in several places at the same time. And with this onslaught of the COVID and monkeypox and the dengue, then you can actually pluck from this particular group who will speak in another topic. I think that would be best, considering in the last 2 years, these health advocates, including myself, have been invited to several fora. And I would say the level of confidence in the public, I think in this group, modesty aside, has increased as well. So I would say this is a certain idea that I'd like to push as well, because there's a dearth of talent right now, considering there are many things that we're doing right now. But there are people whose whose hearts are actually in the right places and would like to help the government. All they need to do is to summon these leaders to help up and step up to the situation.
All right. We're going to pause for a quick break right now and resume this conversation after that, Dr. Tony.
Yes. Okay.
Welcome back to Agenda. My name is Regina Lay, sitting in for Cito Beltran. I was just talking to Dr. Tony Leachon earlier, and it's my privilege this morning as well to introduce another special guest. We've got Dr. Maria Consorcia Lim-Quizon, or Dr. Conky Quizon. She's a member of the National Immunization Technical Advisory Group, or NITAG. Welcome to the show, Doc Conky. We were just talking about monkeypox just before the break. And my first question to you is, just this morning we got, there was news that the United States is behind on its procurement of vaccines for monkeypox because they had actually delayed asking the manufacturer to mass produce these vaccines. But already a lot of people are asking whether we would need to roll out vaccines for monkeypox in bulk as well, just the way we did COVID-19. What do you think?
We don't. The simple answer, well, first of all, good morning, Regina, and good morning, Dr. Leachon.
Good morning.
We don't at the moment because it's not like COVID, wherein, the transmission is that quick, that fast. We're talking about direct contact here, as the main form of the way you can get infected is through direct contact with the person, or with the things that the person use. So it's not likely that we would need to roll out vaccination for monkeypox at the moment. Not really likely. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to, we haven't even gotten there where COVID is concerned. And COVID is a bigger concern at the moment, and not monkeypox. So the short answer is no.
Thank you for being very candid. I guess people are just on very heightened alert because of what we lived through with
Right.
COVID-19.
Right. But we've been through that. And I think in the past 2 or 3 years, what happened was that we got all this information, we got all into details, granular talaga, so to speak. And people get so, the more that we feed them this and that, the more that they get confused. And we don't get them to do what they need to do at the end of the day. So, tama na muna. So we say, no, wag muna yan na isipin natin. We got that covered. Or at least the Department of Health has that covered at the moment. Their surveillance system is working well, such that awa ng Diyos na diagnose naman.
Naagapan naman. Dr. Tony, go ahead.
Regina, can I chime in with Ma'am Kongki?
Go ahead.
Actually, I agree with her completely. Not really, because the mode of transmission is not basically just like the COVID. It's airborne. It's actually direct physical contact, and in that way, that the urgency of having the vaccine is not as great as you have with COVID. So what we need right now, again, is to educate the public for acute detection and surveillance, and then form a team that will work on it while we actually step up with the booster program, the COVID. I think one day at a time. I think the marching order of the president is to boost up in the next 100 days to 200 days so that we can actually be prepared for the face-to-face classes and open up the economy while we prepare with a separate perhaps group or task force with the knowledge experts brought from the DOH and perhaps coming from the medical committee to craft an educational platform, strategic communication. And when there's a need for vaccines there, then perhaps we can go first with the regulatory process on how to procure. And this would not be the entire population. It's only limited. Those exposed to the smallpox, right? And we should have them ready regulatory wise, because we cannot order certain drugs if we have not cleared this with the FDA. So they should come up with an EUA, because you're going to repurpose the smallpox vaccine for this indication. So you need a compassionate use or an EUA.
Right.
You can actually procure this from the United States. So hold our horses first. And I agree with Kongki. Let's focus first on the COVID pandemic response.
But to Doc Kongki's point, about the bombardment of misinformation or information even, and we're also hearing that a lot of parents are feeling overwhelmed because there's the face-to-face classes are about to be implemented once more later this year. Tapos you're still dealing with COVID-19, obviously. Now we have monkeypox, and then there's the surge in dengue cases, right? And not to mention your run-of-the-mill flu. So there's so many things as a parent that you worry about sending your kids back in school. So my question to you both is, do you think this is still the right move? Should we resume classes?
Yes. Kongki, please. And then,
well,
okay.
I call it BC, before COVID. Before COVID, nandiyan na yung dengue, nandiyan na yung trangkaso, nandiyan na yung kuminsan typhoid, sabay-sabay. It's like this isn't the first time that we're dealing with so many diseases at any given time. That's a real and present danger, whatever viruses are there. And so as parents, we just have to be vigilant, and we just have to see to it that that our children are protected, and the best way to protect them is yung kanilang resistensya. Not everything can be covered by whatever vaccines are available. If we are really good parents, then mauna muna yung nutrition and kalusugan in general, regardless of whatever viruses or whatever diseases are out there.
Okay.
Doc Tony, go ahead.
Well, the first reason why we fail, though I concur with Conky, the first reason why we fail in health is basically ignorance. And we need really to educate the public. With the mode of transmission, these viruses are different. For COVID, you have airborne, droplets, and all the things that we know right now. For dengue, it's a vector-related. So it's actually mosquitoes. So the attack should be a whole government approach plus the private sector to rid out of the mosquitoes, the breeding places, and protect your kids by wearing all of this clothing. So I think that should be understood by the parents. All right. And then with water, with floods and all, dengue, leptospirosis come in. It's also actually to educate the public kung anong pag-iingatan. Dengue, lamok, leptospirosis, wading in the water. So the first biggest step is to educate them kasi doon ka panalo na. The monkeypox, hindi. Kasi hindi naman siya airborne eh. It is a physical intimate contact. So, ang ibig sabihin, hindi dapat mag-worry ang parents because ang mode of transmission different. What would hurt them is the unvaccinated COVID. Kasi kung unvaccinated sila, they're not protected. So, kailangan, they should join the government effort. And then, perhaps to me, all the agencies right now should support DepEd, should support the business sector, na mas step up natin ang vaccination so that we increase the layer of immunity and make the people resilient. Kung ano man sa variants ang dumating sa bansa natin. And then manage the other things na meron na tayo before na hindi lang natin natututukan ngayon because of the enormity and hugeness of the COVID pandemic response. And that's my take on this.
Right. That's a good point as well. Let me bring the conversation back to COVID-19. Doc Conky, as a member of NITAG, I'm sure you guys are, every day you think about how you can bring up the rates of booster vaccinations in the country. What else do you think needs to be done? Particularly even as all of us in the media are constantly reporting now, itong new variant is much more transmissible and is better at evading immunity, right? Pero parang it's falling on deaf ears.
Well, that where communication is concerned, you have to repeat the message at least 30 times para pumasok sa utak, ganon. And then once pumasok sa utak, there needs to be repeat uli para change in attitude until such time that the change in attitude would actually be translated into practice. Okay, so wag tayo magsasawa to tell them. The other thing that would help, but yung panakot. Sometimes we tend to be complacent, especially the last few months. No, akala natin it has gone. Okay? So it's coming back. Hospitals are getting filled up again. So siguro now more than ever, kailangan pa bang ituro yan? Kumbaga, eto na, andito na naman. So go for your, if you haven't had the first booster, go for it. If you had one, it's time for the second booster. So, kulit lang ng kulit. Unfortunately, we cannot do anything about that except kulit.
Really, really try to drive home the message, no?
Right. Kasi it's on the individual level na eh. The government has done its part. Nag-provide ng vaccines. Tapos, even sa local government, they're trying their best na available and accessible. Yung tao na lang talaga ang kailangan. So, nasa individual level na yan.
Yeah. Dr. Ninay, kasi we're talking as well earlier about how much misinformation is out there about COVID-19 vaccines kasi, right? That's hard to battle as well. Yeah.
Right. I think that the strategy is to come up with a Bureau of Knowledge experts. echoing the Department of Health messaging. So we have right now a group, let's say from the Philippine College of Physicians, Philippine Society of Microbiology Infectious Diseases. And some of them are actually working with the Department of Health. But we need more voices right now, considering that we are, faced with an avalanche of viral illnesses. So we have COVID, we have dengue, then you have monkeypox and all. So what we need to do is actually tap the PSMID so they could come up with a partnership with the Department of Health and then delegate them with authority, just follow the blueprint so wala masyadong misinterpretation. And then come up with a soft media on Twitter and Instagram and those infographics that will be easily understood by the public. It's just that we have to overwhelm them with the right information, with credible information experts. I think that's the way to go here.
Yeah.
Right.
And if I may, no, sana as simple as possible. Yung simple para non consistently and correctly repetitive yung mga messages na napakasimple. Because the more that we add, para ba nakaka-add ba sa kredibilidad natin para kung ano-anong detalye binibigay natin, mas nakakawindang sa general population. So yes, I agree with you. A group of experts to find out what do we really need to tell them, but nandun din yun, dapat the simplest way that we can tell them.
Right. That's a great point.
Regina, there's a quotation from Albert Einstein. If we could not explain to a 6-year-old kid, then we don't understand it as well. So the message is basically to craft and simplify our messaging, and then with the idea that we're communicating to a 6-year-old kid, and then more visual in their presentation, so that we can cut through these obstacles in terms of communicating to the public.
That is a fantastic point to end on. Thank you so much for that quote. Thank you both, Doctors Anthony Leachon and Maria Consorcia Lim-Quizon. We thank you so much for your time and insights this morning. That is today's agenda. Keep it here on Cignal TV channels 8 and 250 for the latest news. I'm Regina Lay. We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thank you.